This Black History Month, join us in celebrating Black resistance, past, present, and future. Pick up a copy of our Black History Month journal. Get inspired by our posters of Black icons at library locations across the borough, and browse our book lists, all ages programs, and much more at queenslib.org/BHM 2023. What's your favorite thing to do at the library? Get creative and show us by submitting a photo to our 6th annual Share Your Love for Queens Public Library contest from February 1st through February 28th. Learn more at queenslib.org/librarylovers 2023. Tax season is here. Queens Public Library is partnering with a number of organizations to offer free in-person tax counseling sessions at several QPL locations. Visit our blog at queenslibrary.org for more information.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. I'm Christopher Galarza, Queens Public Library's Community Health Educator. Today, we are joined by Denise Johnson from the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Denise is a public health educator with experience in environmental disease and injury prevention and social services, working as a case manager for many years. She has a master's in public health education and a bachelor's in health services administration. She has dedicated the last 20 years to serving New York City by protecting and promoting the health and well-being of our community. We're happy to have Denise here with us and welcome all of you to our program. As always, if you have any questions during the presentations, please put them in the chat so that we can speak about them at the end in the Q&A. And without further ado, Denise Johnson, please take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Christopher, for that great introduction. And once again, I'm Denise, and I will be presenting on lead poisoning prevention. So just going to go to this. Give me one moment. So today's learning objectives, we will talk about what is lead. You will know who is at risk for lead poisoning, what does lead exposure do to the body, how to prevent lead poisoning, and what to do if we are exposed to lead sources. So what is lead? Lead, we know, is a metal and it's found in nature. It's soft and malleable. It's durable, and it has a low melting point, and it's easy for welding. So this is like one of the reasons why it was used a lot in the industry, because the industry likes to use it because it has an adaptable to multi-purposes, including they were able to mass produce lead, and they used it in such thing as in pipes. Also, you find it in paint where it was able to hold the color. So although lead is incredibly useful metal, but it's also very toxic to humans. So where is lead found? So we know that lead can be found indoor and in outdoor paint. Also, it can be found in color pigments. It's used in different glazes, so you might find it on different pottery. On the outside, you'll see the nice glazes. Also, there are some products from other countries that might contain lead. So, for instance, the different spices, different jewelry, toys, cosmetics, as I mentioned before, different pottery, also in soil and plumbing. So with lead paint and within New York City banned lead-based paint in 1960. In New York City, it's the most commonly identified source of lead exposure for children. And that's because it's the peeling and chipping of the lead paint and the dust that it turns into that can be very harmful to children. So we have the local law 1 of 2004. So basically, the New York City Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Act, it requires building owners and group daycare centers operators to annually inspect for lead paint hazard and fix them safely. So as you know, you probably, if you live in an apartment building, you probably had to just recently return your mandated annual notice, which we'll talk about a little later on. But this is what is used to, see if there are any children that are in a home underneath 6 and if there is any pill and paint. But we'll go over that annual notice a little bit later on.
Clearly not.
So how does lead get into the body? So there's 2 ways. So you can ingest it. So you can do that by eating it, swallowing it, or from a mouth to mouth lead containing product. Also, you can inhale it. So you can breathe in lead dust or the different fumes, especially like if you work in renovations or if someone who is working on bridges, or if you're doing lead abatement, you can inhale the different lead dust, which can be harmful to the body. So some of the different health effects. So for children, it can be damage to the brain and nervous system. And that can also cause learning and behavioral problems in children. For pregnant women, they may suffer miscarriage, have premature labor, or experience high blood pressure. And to the fetus, there may be brain damage and developmental delays to the fetus. And for adults, and this is more so adults who are, exposed to large amount of lead. So they can experience brain and nervous system disorders. Also, they can experience hypertension, cardiovascular, and kidney damage, or reproductive health issues. So you may not always look or feel sick when you are lead poisoned. The only way to know is to get a lead blood test. So for New York City, the blood lead screening requirements. So for children, New York State requires that healthcare providers test all children at 1 and 2 for lead. And children should also be questioned for lead exposure by their doctor every year until they are 6 years of age. So you also may have children who come to the United States from other countries and they may have never been tested. So even if you have a child, let's say is 13, and if you have concerns about the child may be lead poisoned, please do feel free to reach out to that doctor and request a lead blood test. Also, with pregnant women, doctors should ask pregnant women for lead exposure during their first prenatal visit. And if you, let's say, if you're unsure that you, let's say, if you do know someone who is pregnant and they're not sure if their doctor tested them and you're past the first trimester, and if you're in your second or even in your third and you have concerns, do speak to the doctor to find out if you have lead poisoning, because you want to make sure that you find out, because you don't want to pass that on to your child. And if you are a pregnant woman, and let's say if you was exposed as a child, the lead can stay into your bones, and then that can be passed on to the fetus. So it is important, if you are pregnant, that you are tested to find out if you have been lead poisoned. And then workers are at risk for lead exposure because of their jobs, and they should be monitored by their employer. So this is the different methods that they use for testing for lead. So there is the finger stick method, and what they do is that they prick the finger and get a little bit of blood on the tip, and they test it and collect it and put it in a vial. And we also have the venous blood test. And that's where you have someone who's trained to take blood. They use a needle and they draw blood from the vein in your arm. The provider will decide on the procedure. The blood test has more of an accuracy, but sometimes if they do a finger stick, they may also do the blood test as well, just to make sure that there is accuracy. As we mentioned before, these are the different populations as risk. that are more at risk for lead poisoning, and pregnant women, children, and people who work with lead. So we know that children are more at risk for lead exposure. And that is because children are more at risk because of their mouthing behavior. As we know, young children, the way that they explore the world is by putting everything in their mouth. So if anyone has a little toddler or if you have a little infant, the first thing they do, what happens? Everything tends to go into the mouth. And that's just their way of exploring, and that's mouthing behavior. So as you see in this picture here, we have a little child, and the first thing he has his toys in his mouth. So if those toys came, let's say, from another country where things are not regulated as opposed to in the United States. So if this was made with lead, and now the child is putting in their mouth, the child can be exposed to lead that way. And as you see in the background, there is paint on the wall that is starting to peel and chip. So what happens is that that paint and the chips start to turn into dust. So if the child is playing or they're curling on the floor, or if that dust lands onto the toys and now the child puts the toys in their mouth with the lead dust, they can be exposed to lead that way. So you can see why children are more likely to be exposed to lead. So also, I just want to mention that lead can be found in toys, jewelry, amulets, and tabets. So metal parts and paints on some jewelry, amulets, and toys may contain lead. So that's why you want to be very careful what you do give your child to play with. So in the picture there, you see there is a painted wooden rattle, and that probably came, sometimes from other cultures. They have stuff imported, and like I said, the different paints or the glazes that were used to make this wooden rattle may contain lead, and you don't want to give that to your child because if it starts, um, you know, to deteriorate, or if the child puts it in their mouth, they can be exposed. So different amulets and charms used for protection as well can have been made with lead. And as you can see, there was a butterfly pendant, and that was purchased at a local street fair, and that had contained lead. So you want to make sure you do not give adult jewelry to toys, adult jewelry to children, sorry. And also this toy car here, in the United States, we do have regulations, but if you get toys coming from other countries, there's no way that you ensure that these toys may not have lead or not. So you want to make sure that if you do buy stuff that is bought in the United States where it is regulated, because this toy car may contain paint, and if you're giving it to your child and they're playing with it all day, and what children like to do, they like to put their hands in their mouth. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure you keep damaged toys with chip and paint away from children, never to give adult jewelry to children. And also, children, as I mentioned, are more at risk because they often put objects in their mouth. So for pregnant women, the reason that they might be at risk is because of their childhood exposure. So like I mentioned before, if a pregnant woman, if they was exposed during their childhood, the lead can be stored in the body. It can stay in the teeth and the bones, and that can be passed on to their child. Also, we have women who might be more exposed because of pica. So that is eating non-food items. So certain pregnant women, they get these cravings and they might eat soil. And if they're eating soil that has been contaminated with lead, now they can be lead poison. Also, you have some pregnant women, they also get the craving for clay. So that's how, pregnant women, because of pica, may be at risk. Also, using certain products from other countries that may contain lead, as we mentioned before, certain foods, ceramics, health remedies, cosmetics, and religious powders. So if the pregnant woman is using these different items, they can be exposed and may become lead poison. So if you're pregnant, you want to make sure you do avoid getting foods from other countries that are not regulated. So, for instance, like certain spices, which I will talk about a little later on, and also ceramics that are bought from other countries, or if you had them imported or shipped over. I know a lot of times we like to hold on to our customs and traditions, but if you do have these items, you just want to make sure you're not using them to store food or drink, food from, because it will absorb into the food or the water, and now you're drinking it and you can be exposed. But we'll talk a little bit more about these items as well. So, as I said, certain foods and spices and snacks. So, in the picture, we have flavored grasshopper snacks, chapalinos, also preserved mangoes, chili, and turmeric. So, certain snacks that are used for chili or turmeric pulp from other countries may contain lead. And spices brought or sent from other countries may also contain high levels of lead. So you want to buy your spices locally. So the issue with the spices, it's more so that the lead comes from when it is produced. So a lot of times in other countries, what they will do is they can add like the lead so that it has more weight. And it's just how they go about manufacturing, where now that the spices have become contaminated with the lead. So what happened is if you go and buy it from, another country, or have it shipped over, or even if, they're, New York City, this great big city of 8 million plus people, you do will still find certain traditional stores in certain neighborhoods um, where you will have spices, although you buy them locally, but these spices have been imported. And the problem is, if it's coming from another country, those spices have not been inspected by the USA. So we don't know what's in those spices. So, for instance, let's say you like to cook up a curry dish and you come from certain other countries, and you might like their curry because it seems to be much stronger. You like the taste. But the problem is, we don't know what's in that, let's say, if, what's in that curry powder, or if you're using turmeric, we don't know what's in the spices. So you want to buy stuff that, like I said, that has been regulated in the US. This way, because they have to list what's in the products, they have been tested, and we know that there's not lead in it. There's no safe amount of lead that's in the body. So it is very important that you buy not only your spices locally, but spices that have been regulated by the US. And I know that, as I mentioned before, people like to hold on to their traditions. So you might have your grandmother who's like, oh no, I'm used to buying, getting my spices imported from, let's say, my country. It just tastes better. But it's up to us to do education as well to our family, to let them know how those spices can be harmful to us. And that, there are other ways to still carry on traditions, but just to do it safely by buying products that are, manufactured here in the USA. As I mentioned before, there are certain ceramics and potteries that may contain lead. So you have glazes and paint used to decorate. Traditional ceramics may contain lead. So if we look at this picture here, this is beautiful, different pottery. Like I said, a lot of us like to hold on to traditions, especially if we come from other cultures. The problem is that lead can get into the food and drinks that are cooked, stored, or served in ceramics. And lead comes out more with acidic or hot drinks or food. So you don't want to use traditional handmade ceramics for cooking, serving, drinking, or storing food. So a lot of these traditional or homemade ceramics, where they come from around the world. So you might get ceramics from Mexico, Ecuador, Turkey, Morocco, um, in from Georgia. And when I say Georgia, I don't mean the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia. So you see a lot of these items that come from another country. So yes, they do look very pretty. So some of the things you can do is to maybe just use them for decorations. Maybe you could put some artificial flowers in them. So this way you're still able to have uh, the pottery, but you're not using it to use it for food or drinking because, like I said, the lead can be absorbed into the food from these different potteries. So you want to avoid them. And if you have used these products in the past to prepare, cook, serve, or store food, ask your doctor for a lead blood test. So this way, if you do have concerns that you might have been lead poisoning from using these different products, because the only way to tell if you've been lead poisoned is to take a blood test. Because you may not always feel sick or feel or look sick when you're lead poisoned, and the only way to rule that out is by taking a lead blood test. And you can always call 311 or visit nyc.gov/lead free for more information. There, you'll get more information in terms of the different more products, ceramics, and we have a lot more information in terms of lead online as well. As I mentioned before, there's also certain cosmetic and religious powders that may contain lead. Like I said, coming from a different country, you might like to still hold on to your tradition. We know in some certain Hindu or Indian cultures, we have the women who like to put on, the different dyes you may see, like the red dots or certain cosmetics that they use. And the problem is these cosmetics or cultural powders may contain lead. And lead can be swallowed when hands that have touched these items are placed in the mouth. So if you're touching these cosmetics, you're placing it on your face. So and you're touching it. So now, and if you go and put your hands in your mouth, you can be exposed to lead. So you want to make sure that you wash your hands after handling these items. Also to make sure you're keeping it away from children and to never use it in foods. And if you have used traditional cosmetics or cultural powders, ask your doctor for a lead blood test. So in the picture here, we have Sindor, Tyro, Kaja, or Surma. So these are like different eye stuff and cosmetics that are used. And like I said, these products may contain lead. So you want to avoid them at all costs. And if you have used them, make sure that you do wash your hands after handling them. And if you do have concerns, if you have used them in the past, please do reach out to your doctor to get a blood test. Also, there's also certain health remedies and pica. So certain health remedies, supplements, ayurvedic medications from India, China, and other countries may also have high levels of lead, and not only lead, but they also may contain mercury and arsenic. These remedies may be handmade or manufactured, prescribed, over the counter, purchased in the US or abroad. So you want to be very careful about buying different health remedies or supplements that you see sometimes in the local drugstore, or sometimes you might find a store in your neighborhood that sells these different supplements that come imported from other countries. Sometimes they can be purchased in the US or abroad. And the problem is with these, as I mentioned before, because not only are you concerned that it may contain lead, they also may contain mercury and arsenic. And the thing is, lead is not always listed on the product label, so it can be difficult to tell the difference between safe and dangerous products. So if you look at the picture on the right, you have different ayurvedic medication. And as I mentioned, they may contain lead, mercury, and arsenic. You have Kabbalah chalk, and that's a West African remedy. And they usually use that for morning sickness, and that contains lead and arsenic. And the problem is, like I said, it may not always be listed what's contained in the product. So you want to avoid using that. And there's also something called Vita Breath. And it's a supplement made in the US for healthy lung, respiratory system, and for your kidney, and it may contain lead. So you just got to be careful when you use certain of these products. As I mentioned before, especially when you come from another country and you want to hold on to the traditions, you might been using these products passed on from generation and generation. And the problem is that it may not be so safe for you. So it's important that, you try to avoid using these products. So we talked about children, their risks. We talked about pregnant women, and now we're going to talk about workers. Why are they at risk for lead poisoning? So you have workers such as bridge painters, construction workers, people who work with batteries, recycling, or even lead abatement. They're around high levels of lead, so they have easy exposure risks. Also, people who in certain hobbies. So let's say if you like to do home renovation, especially let's say if you are working on a home that's been built before 1960, there's a good reason that that home may have lead in it. A lot of homes or in apartment buildings in New York City built before 1960, there's a good chance that they may contain lead. So also people, let's say if you like to go to the range, target shooters. So when you're firing off ammunition, you get the lead dust. Also someone that's working in furniture and refinishing, also glass staining. So those are different hobbies, not including all where someone might have more of a risk of being exposed to lead. So for work, you want to make sure you work safe. So if you do work in one of those injur, industries, as well, if you're performing, certain hobbies, you want to make sure that you do take steps to protect your family, you and your family. So you don't want to eat or drink or smoke in the work area. You want to make sure that you do wash your hands and face with soap and water before eating, drinking, or smoking. You want to make sure that you, if you can, wear protective clothing and also a proper respirator. Also, you want to use safe practices and, use wet cleaning methods to reduce dust exposure. So, if you're doing lead abatement, they shouldn't be dry scraping. Or dry sanding to remove the lead. They have to use a method where they have to wet down the area or surface first before they scrape or, sand. And that's just to reduce the amount of lead dust that will come off, let's say, the surface, because, the whole idea is to decrease lead exposure. And a lot of times, like I said, if you doing lead abatement and you get that lead dust, it can go over all over the area. So this is why you want to wet the area first. So this way it reduces the amount of lead dust that is coming off. Also, you want to make sure that you wash your work clothes separately from the other household clothing. And also, before you come home, you want to make sure that you do take off your clothes and shoes before you enter the home. Because, you don't want to walk around your home, and especially if you had lead dust on it, because now you're spreading that lead dust throughout your whole home. So that's a good practice to do. Just to eliminate or avoid the risk of exposing your family, is just to take off your shoes before you enter the home and just to take off those clothes and make sure that you do wash them separately. And also to get regular blood tests for yourself and your family. As we mentioned before, most adults with lead poisoning do not look or feel sick, and the only way is to get a lead blood test. So some of the safe work practices. So let's say if you do or you are a tenant, and let's say if you do have lead in your home, and let's say if you do have a child younger than 6. So when the contractor comes out to the home, there's certain safe work practices that they must perform. So number one, the contractors, they have to be EPA certified, and that stands for Environmental Protection Agency. So the contractors have to be certified by the EPA. That's number one. And you have a right to ask for their certification when they come to your home, as well as their ID. So property owners, they are responsible if there is a child younger than 6 in a home, and if there is any peeling or chip paint, that they have to fix that. So property owners must use safe work practices and train workers to fix lead paint hazards when doing general repair work that disturbs lead paint. So property owners and contractors, as I mentioned before, they should never dry scrape or dry sand. If the method of them fixing the lead in the home, you have some who will use the method where they want to, um, let's say, instead of using putting up drywall, um, you have that method you can do for repair. Or if you're going to repair it the other way, you have to use the wet method. And that's where you will wet the wall first and then you can scrape it or sand it, but it has to be wet. It should never be dry scrape or dry sand. And they have to also cover all areas where they're removing the lead with plastic. And also, they have to cover furniture that's not movable in the area. And as well, they also responsible for cleaning up after they finish. So they have to clean all the work area daily with either a wet mop or a HEPA vacuum. And that's their responsibility. It's never the tenant responsibility to clean up. It's because the contractors are EPA certified and they've been properly trained how to clean up. So at any time, like I said, if you are a tenant and you feel that the contractors are not working safely, please feel free to call 311 and make a complaint for unsafe work practices. So this way an inspector can come out and see what they are doing unsafely. Sometimes they will have them stop if they're not doing something correctly until it can be properly done. So if you would like to get more information on lead safe work methods or to register for lead safe work practice class, you can always call 311 or you can always call us at the Healthy Homes unit and we can take your information if you're would like to know more information. Our number is 646-632-6023. Also, I'll be able to give you that number later on, but that's for the Healthy Homes unit here at the Department of Health, where we're able to share lead education as well, give you more information. So, how can families protect themselves? So, one thing they can do in their home, they want to make sure that they keep it clean. So, they can do that by washing floors, windowsills, child's hands, and toys often. So, if you notice that you do have a problem with peeling paint in the home, you want to make sure that this is a practice that you do until they can resolve the problem in the home. And I just want to say, so when you are cleaning the home, make sure that the mop is wet. You don't want a dry mop or dry dust because that will spread dust particles throughout the home. So you want to make sure that you are using a wet mop or wet cloth. This way that the lead dust can stick to those areas and not spread it all over. Another practice is to make sure that you remove your shoes before entering your home. Some other things that families can do, keep it out. Make sure you avoid using products known to contain lead. For more information regarding these products, you can visit www.nyc.gov/hazardous products. And also, you want to use cold tap water for drinking, cooking, and making baby formula. You want to let your water run in the morning or, when you're first using the water, at least for a minute. And you want to use the cold water. And the reason why, because when you use hot water, the hot water can bring up the sediments that has been in the pipes. So the problem with New York City, our water has been shown to be very great. The problem is in the building is the old pipings that may contain lead. So that's the problem. So as I mentioned, you want to run the water for 30 seconds to a minute before using it until it's noticeably colder. And if you have any, let's say, issues or concerns about the piping and you have concerns about the water, you can always call 311 and get a drinking water lead test kit. They will send out the lead test kit. You would take a water sample, send it back, and then they will process the results and they will let you know about your results. Sorry. So something else you can do is speak up. So you want to remind your doctor to test your child at 1 and 2 for lead poisoning. And if you think you or your family member are at risk for lead poisoning, ask your doctor for a lead blood test. So that's some of the things that families, different steps they can do to protect themselves. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation about the annual notice. So, this is an annual notice you should have received, and it's actually due back today, the 15th of February, 2023. So, this is Protect Your Child from Lead Poison and Window Fall Notice, and this is an annual notice. So, you will receive a notice that when you first sign a lease, your property owner, landlord should be giving you this notice. And basically, what it does annually, so you, like I said, you'll get this notice when you first sign your lease, and then you also will get it annually. So the one annually might look a little different. And basically, what it does, it asks if there's any peeling lead paint in the home. And it also checks to see if there's any child younger than 6 in the home, or if there's a child who routinely spends 10 or more hours with you each week in your home. So if there is a problem with peeling paint and there's a child younger than 6 in the home, the landlord is or property owner is required to fix this problem. And if your landlord or property owner doesn't fix this problem, please call 311 and make a complaint for pill and paint. So this way an inspector can come out and they will inspect the home. And this way, then the landlord or property owner is given a certain amount of time to correct the issue. In the event, if they still don't correct the problem, you do need to follow up with HPD lead unit, or you can call 311 and let them know that the property owner has not fixed the problem. So this is the only way. So we also need tenants to do their part, because this is the only way the landlord or property owner will know if there is a child younger than 6 in the home, if there's peeling paint, and as well in terms of window guards. So if there's a child younger um, than 10 years in the home, they will need to have the window guards put in. But this is the only way they will know if there is a child in the home. They won't know unless you complete this form. Because sometimes let's say when you first moved into your apartment, you may not have no children. But let's say you have family that came to live with you and now they're staying with you and they have children. This is the only way that your property owner will know that. So it's important that you do your part. This form is usually given out at the beginning of January, and it's due back by February 15th. So you do need to complete this form annually. It's very important. So if you would like more information pertaining to lead, you can always email us, or if you want to know more information about other environmental hazard in the home, you can always email us at healthyhomes@health, and that's nyc.gov. You can always call us at 646-632-6023, or you can dial 212 band lead, and we have someone who will be able to answer your questions from 8:30 to 4:30. That's Monday through Friday. And in after hours, we have voice messages, and someone will return your call. And also, if you speak different language, we do have access to the language line to many different languages. And so we'll still be able to assist you if you speak another language. You can also request education materials and presentation by emailing us. And that's once again at healthyhomes@health.nyc.gov, or calling us once again at 646-632-6023. And if you happen to forget those numbers, and the easiest way, you can always call 311 and ask to be transferred to the Healthy Homes hotline, and they will transfer you to someone here at the Department of Health. So some of the different key resources, you can always visit lead poison prevention information, and that's at nyc.gov/health. I just gave you the number for our number here. For more information on products also known to contain lead, you can visit us at www.nyc.gov/hazardous products. To report pill and paint or unsafe repair, renovation work to your property owner, If property owner does not respond, I'm sorry, please call 311. We also have online webinars for community workshop or professional trainings to schedule available on www.nyc.gov/lead and search community presentation. If you do live in a NYCHA residence, NYCHA has their maintenance customer contact center number, and that number is 718-707-7771. Once again, I'll just repeat it, 718-707-7771, and that's if you live in NYCHA. If you would like to contact us to discuss partnership strategies, once again, you can either email us or call us. And this is some of our different key resources. To request hard copies or lead related materials, you can visit us at nyc.gov/lead and scroll down to additional resources. So this is some of the pamphlets that we do have on our website. As you can see, we have children and lead poisoning, what every parent should know. We have pregnancy and lead poisoning, what you should know. We also have work safe, what construction workers should know about lead poisoning. As well, we have different brochures on consumer products. So you can find a lot of those materials, like I said, online. We have them in several different languages. And we also have additional multilingual educational materials. So we have more information on safe gardening in New York City. We have South Asian and lead poisoning. We also have more information, if you would like, on toy safety tips. One of our other popular pamphlet is how to get rid of mold in the home. So we have, and also our Healthy Homes brochure, which that covers all the different health hazards that we cover. And that one is like also a popular pamphlet that we have. And you can, like I said, you can find these online, or you can always request hard copies as well. And just please, visit us at www.nyc.gov/lead, and you can find a lot more information that we do have online. So that is the end of my presentation. I just want to thank you for allowing me to come and present. Hopefully you were able to take away some information about lead poison, how it may affect children, pregnant women, or even adults who work in, in the industry where you're doing lead abatement, or if you're around a lot of lead exposure, or even if you're doing certain hobbies where you may not have been aware where you may have been exposed, like I myself recently learned, especially like someone who likes to go to the range, it just never dawned on me that someone can get lead exposure from just going to the range, and from, shooting off the ammunition and the lead dust that they may contain. So, I'm also learning new stuff every day. So, I just want to thank you for allowing me to come and present. Once again, thank you. So if you have any type of questions or concerns, please feel to list them in the chat, and me and Christopher will do our best to answer them. And once again, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Denise. That was a great presentation. And as Denise said, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and so we can talk about them and respond to them. One thing I wanted to ask you about, so you specifically mentioned babies and children, women who are pregnant, or those who can become pregnant, and workers, but being specifically high risk. But really, everyone is at risk for lead poisoning. Is that correct?
So what happens? So number one, there is no safe amount of lead that should be in the body.
Hmm.
For children, what happens? Because the CDC actually just lowered the amount. Before it was like 5, but if a child comes back with a blood lead level and it's 3.5, so
Hmm.
anything 3.5 or above would be a level for concern.
Hmm.
So what happens? The reason why, let's say the average adult, if we do have like lead exposure, the problem the reason why it's not so much as a concern for like the average person is because we're able to get rid of the lead. It's mainly children because younger children, one, because they are still young, they're growing, they have not fully developed. So that's why you will see children 6 and younger, because we know at that stage they're still growing, they're still developing. But for the average person, like if you're not around like a lot of lead, opposed to let's say a construction worker who's working on a bridge, they will be exposed to high levels. So that's why it's more of a concern. But the average person like me and you, let's say if we're in living in an apartment and it's peeling paint, it's not so much of a concern for us because
Mhm.
we're able to, to get rid of the levels of lead in the body. With pregnant women, it's because if they had prior or exposure, it may stay in the body,
Mhm.
and you don't want to pass it on to the child. Or if they're, let's say, eating clay dust or stuff like that, they can be exposed. But for the average person, it's not so much a concern because, like I said, we're able to pass the lead. I hope I was able to like
Yeah, no,
clarify that. Okay.
definitely, definitely. And you touched on this a little bit, but can you explain more? So like if someone is exposed to lead and let's say a high concentration of lead, do they show any symptoms, or is it really more of like I have to think about where I've been and then go get tested?
So, one of the problems with lead exposure or lead poisoning, you may not look or feel sick. So that's the problem. So that's why I said, let's say if you were a worker and you worked around a large, you had like a large exposure to lead. You may not, you may walk around and just feel normal. You may not have no symptoms at all. So the only way is to go get a lead blood test. Um, but there's like really like some people really don't have symptoms, but let's say if you was a worker and you was exposed, maybe you do have hypertension, so you might notice that, okay, I'm starting, I noticed that my blood pressure is up and normally it's not. So it all depends. Each person is an individual. Like I said, you may not have no symptoms, but that's why we do stress if, let's say, if you use different products or spices from another country and you have concerns, just go to your doctor and request a blood test because you may not always look or feel sick and you still may be lead walking around lead poison, but you may not, experience
Mhm.
no symptoms.
And that
Um,
was
mhm.
sorry. Yeah.
No, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, and that was another thing I was thinking about, specifically about spices and things like that, because my family's Caribbean. There's a lot of
Okay.
different things that that aren't necessarily stuff that you could find here, or you go to these specialty stores, right? Is there a way to test your products, or is it really more of just knowing? Like I know you said to look for things that were manufactured in the United States, but not everything, can be manufactured here. So is there a way we can test our products that we're using?
Okay. So for that, I would actually have to, do a little bit more research,
Okay.
and I can always give you the answer.
Mhm,
Like I know, for instance, like in Home Depot or certain places where you can test like your soil, but to do
mhm.
your individual testing of, let's say, different products, I'm not exactly sure, but I can get some more information and get back to you regarding that.
So currently, the best way is to look for it to say manufactured in US, or have like a stamp of a seal saying that it's been inspected to make sure that
Right.
you stay safe.
Right. And the other part to that is like if you did go and test your own products, you have different manufacturers who will use different standards,
Mm, mhm.
and that can become a problem because one might say a certain level and someone else might say something else. So even if you did do your own testing, it can be a little tricky. So that's why you do want to use stuff that has been, approved to be used in the United States, because you might get one place that tests and might say, oh no, let's say 10, oh that's a valid amount, but for us in the US we might say, oh no, it should be 5. So each company that does their own testing might have different set of range, and that you don't want to take chances with your health. So if you can use a product, I know everything is not manufactured in the US, but maybe if you could find something similar to the product that you use, because you just, at the end of the day, it's safety. You want to make sure that, that it's safe for you and your family, the stuff that you are using. That's why I said I know a lot of times we like to hold on to our traditions. Sometimes it's hard to get grandmother, to change, or grandfather to change from the way that they have been taught and raised. That's why with the new generation, if we can teach them, like, there are other alternatives, things that we can use, and why these products that we have used in the past may be harmful to us. So that's our ultimate goal, is, to educate the community.
And you mentioned about getting your soil tested. What is the process to do that?
So in terms of testing, like I said, I know that was like a new topic for us that we started presenting. So for that, um, I would also have to do a little research, because that was new for us, the
Okay.
soil. But we do have a presentation for that where they go into more details in terms of that. I do know that you want to make sure, because the problem is with the soil is, let's say if we have a lot of community gardens. So if there
Mhm.
was, let's say, a building that was demolished and now your garden is right next to it, that can get into your soil. So you want to make sure that if you do want to plant, that you use like a raised garden. You want to make sure that, like I said, they do have a kit that you can go and test the soil. I would just have to do more research about that. You just want to make sure you use gloves, and at any time make sure, 'cause, children, they also like to play in the
Mhm.
soil and dirt, that you do wash their hands frequently and often, and make sure that they're not putting their hands in their mouth.
Great. So I just want to make sure that I heard correctly. So, if you are unsure or if you know the history of like the soil in your area, that you should be wearing protective gear, or you should also be using like raised garden beds or sandboxes to make sure that you're not actually in contact with the soil in your area. Is that correct?
Right, yes.
Great. Yeah. And one thing that I'll mention is that you can also check to see if there's a super fund near you. I'm not if sure if everyone out there is aware of super funds, but they're basically the areas of concentrated pollution. And so it's really important, and there's a few that's around down here, to also understand what your community's relation is to these Superfund sites. Um, I- I'm not seeing any comments or questions. So if there's, I'm going to ask Denise just one like major takeaway that you hope everyone got from today, and then we can wrap up.
So, one major thing is, like I said, if you do have young children, please make sure that children are tested for lead poison at 1 and 2. So that is very important, because that's children during their early developmental
Mhm.
stages. And lead poison can affect them. It can affect them having behavioral problems, or they can have learning delays. So it's very important that you do get tested, children tested at 1 and 2. And if like I said, at any time, if you do have concerns, if you have been exposed to lead, because you may not always look or feel sick, please, reach out to your doctor and request a lead blood test. That's very important, because, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm doing education. You're going to have people who still will, like, "Oh, I don't care what they say. I'm still going to use my spices. I'm still going to use my ceramic ware." But at the end of the day, if you do have concerns, please reach out to your doctor and get a lead blood test. That's very important, because, at the end of the day, you don't want your children to be sick. You don't want your family to be sick. The aim is to be healthy.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not saying that in one day you need to stop using all of these things that you're accustomed to, right? Start slowly and kind of minimize your risk and harm until you're able to fully eliminate that risk. I mean, we'll never fully be able to eliminate a risk, but maximize that the protection that we have, right?
Right.
We understand that it's um, a behavior change that you will slowly be incorporating, but together with the information, we can make better decisions for ourselves and our loved ones.
Right. So the next time maybe you have a gathering and you go pull out that ceramic ware, you're like, oh, you know what? I did learn this. Let me not use this and store food in. And slowly but surely it will catch on. So that's our goal. That teach one, you learn one, so that you will spread. And this is something you can and spread back to your family in other places that may not have the education like we have. A lot of times. Other places don't get the education. So if you do have family members, then maybe you can notify them in their country as well, why they shouldn't be using that product. It might just be harder because, in certain places it's harder than in the US to get certain things. So I can understand that. But at least if you can at least educate them why. So that's like my ultimate goal, just to educate and put out the information, and hopefully people will choose to do the right thing, or what they decide, or at least they have the information, and then it's up to them. They can make the choices of how they want to proceed.
Awesome. So I want to say thank you to Denise. Thank you for coming today and educating us and telling us everything about lead and lead exposure. And I want to thank you for joining us. And we will see you at our next program. Bye,
Okay, thank
everyone.
you. Bye.